Good afternoon and welcome to Public Sector Summit here at AWS. I don't have something as sexy as the little Ripper drones to talk to you about, but something just as exciting, and that's VMware Cloud on AWS. I'll just leave this up for a moment for you to have a read. It's our usual disclaimer for any of the information I present today. What I want to talk to you about today is VMware Cloud on AWS, and I think whether it's an analyst like Forrester or IDC or Gartner, they're predicting that in the next 2, 3, 4 years that a good 70%, 80% or 90% of customers, just like yourselves, will be running a hybrid environment. That's workloads on-premise, potentially using a SaaS offering, and then workloads in the cloud as well. And I'd probably challenge anyone in the audience here if you're not already doing that today. So I think the analysts, are being fairly conservative, and I think it's more commonplace than anything else to actually be running hybrid cloud environments with many workloads in different locations. This is something that we've been hearing from our customers, and we know that from VMware as well, from their customers. And it's really about the customers having preferred operating models and really wanting to be able to leverage the skills that they've got, use the software and the environments that they're very much used to, and also managing enterprise workloads in the way and the fashion that they've been doing for many, many years. I think, from an AWS point of view, moving workloads to the cloud really starts to bring about, being able to scale faster, the innovation you heard today in the keynote, giving access for people and companies to work from anywhere, and really getting to go and work and innovate with those technologies on the cloud, and to go international or global in days and months, as opposed to years. So I think, as customers look to moving towards the cloud, they've got this dichotomy. They've got very stable systems on-premise, they've got very good skills in-house or through a partner that's bringing those skills for them, and they've got very, very good enterprise-grade software that they're already using in VMware. So in fact, 2 years ago this month, AWS and VMware announced a partnership. Prior to that, we were probably not as close and seen as competitive in the market. But in the last 2 years, we've really forged ahead and built out a joint offering of VMware Cloud and AWS. And it's really been very much a game changer for our discussions with customers today. So being able to bring the two industry-leading companies together, one in virtualization being VMware and AWS in the public cloud arena, to come together and to allow customers to start to leverage those on-premise environments and technologies that you've been using for many, many years, to now leveraging the benefits in the cloud. And so many of you would be familiar with what you're doing with VMware already in VMware's software-defined data center. And I think, one of the key benefits here has been able to get VMware's software-defined data center to being delivered as a service on the cloud. Many of those attributes that come with being in a software-defined data center, the consistency of familiarity of how you manage those workloads, how you move those workloads, how you store those workloads, and then also just having the operational stability that you've had with VMware for these many years, because it just works. And also, now having the opportunity to have those workloads certainly a lot closer to AWS and to the services that you might already be using in AWS's cloud now. And as Ian mentioned this morning in the keynote, some 165 plus services that AWS has started to develop. Sorry, not started to develop, has developed, and we're developing more as we continue along that journey. But again, the benefits here of being able to have simple and consistent operations. So you don't want to have, incompatible hypervisors, or not being able to manage your systems and your workloads from one pane of glass. So having that 100% compatibility, knowing that you've got those enterprise workloads running on-premise and being able to run into the cloud as well. That's a real kind of, issue that many of our customers have raised, of being a real blocker for them to move to the cloud. And then obviously taking away a lot of the management components of managing that hardware and software on-premise. So if your teams are doing it today, help them to move towards being more valuable in providing their services or getting upskilled to doing other aspects of work in the environment, perhaps at the application level or other different areas of the operations. Again, that enterprise capability. I mean, we're not talking minimal workloads here or lower level workloads. We're talking about the big SAP workloads, the Oracle databases, those workloads that rely and need good compute, storage and network, and also the management capability of being able to manage those workloads in any situation. Again, optimising your resources and making sure that you're not over or under subscribing and being able to move quickly. And I think the third benefit here for VMware Cloud on AWS is really then leveraging how do I innovate faster? How do I get my workloads integrated into AWS services? And if the idea is not to refactor or to re-architect, how can I get those APIs connected so that I'm leveraging solutions like RDS, Relational Database Service that we have, or Kinesis for data streaming, or S3 for storage, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess, one of the key items that customers often talk about too is, if I move workloads to the cloud, I don't want to be locked in. And so VMware Cloud on AWS offers you the opportunity to move those workloads bidirectionally. So you're not stuck on the cloud, so to speak, if you want to move those workloads back on premise. I'll just dive into the offering itself and just give you a quick overview for those who are a bit more visual. So on the left, this might be your on-premise data center. It could be a colo, and it may well represent what you have today. So you'll certainly have vSphere. You may be using vSAN. You may additionally be using NSX. And most likely across the top, you'll have vCenter. All of these components that your engineers and your operational people will have good skills in and understand very well. What we did at AWS was, a few years ago, we developed, and you might have heard Simon talk about our Nitro servers, but as part of those Nitro servers, we offered a bare metal server. And this was very much primarily to help with VMware so that they could then start to look at installing their hypervisor and building out their software-defined data center. So in AWS data centers, we have servers, bare metal servers, and VMware have now started to build the software-defined data center, all of the components that you see there on AWS bare metal servers. Now, the interesting thing here is that we've been engineering this for over 2 years now, 2.5 years, almost 3 years since we've started to get into the labs together, and it's a jointly engineered solution. So we've made necessary changes on the AWS side to make sure that it's fully compatible with VMware's software-defined data center topology, and VMware's done the same as well. But more importantly, and I think this is a key point, that when we talk about VMware Cloud on AWS, we're talking about a platform that's leveraging both sides' technology. And it's not just nested hypervisor and hypervisor. It's integrating our direct connect, as in AWS's direct connect, with VMware's NSX, so that we can move, thousands of VMs at a time. It's integrating our elastic block storage, our EBS, into the offering, and so that you can start to look at how you can tier your storage differently, so that when you have tier 1 storage you need to recover quickly, or short RPO times, you can leverage vSAN. If you need to detach that storage and you don't want to pay as much for it and you want to have a second tier or third tier of storage, you can leverage EBS. The other thing here that we've really pulled together is with our ISV partners or technology partners. So if you're already using, say, NetApp or Veeam, those storage solutions are already certified on VMware. They're certified on AWS, and you can start to leverage those technologies and those investments that you've already made and bring them across and extend those into VMware Cloud and AWS as well. I think the point I made earlier was this is a bi-directional offering. So if it comes up, there we go. You can move workloads backwards and forwards because you're not refactoring or re-architecting or changing the workloads in any way. The workloads that you're moving, if they're running on-premise in a VMware environment, they'll run on VMware Cloud in a VMware environment. And you can manage that either with a vRealize suite or VROP suite, if you have that. If not, certainly vCenter. And so there's really minimal impact to your skills base or to the partners you might be leveraging. There's a low impact, if any, to cultural change because you're not bringing in new tool sets or skill sets. It's an accelerated motion so that you can get those workloads moving as quickly as you could move those workloads on-premise through VMotion. And then you have the added opportunity of leveraging AWS services. So as part of the service, we provide a 25 gigabit link between your VPC in AWS, if you're an existing customer, or we'll set you up one, and the software-defined data center environment for VMware Cloud and AWS. And what that means is that you can integrate and move transfer data with no latency and no data transfer costs. So if you're already an AWS customer, that's very appealing for many of our customers who are thinking about moving VMware workloads to VMware Cloud and AWS. And I think that's a key point that many of the customers are starting to realise is that I have a cloud strategy, I need to move workloads from on-premise, I need to move them into the cloud. Do I take the long journey for the refactoring and re-architecting? Yes, I've decided to do that. But you know what? I can get there very much quicker, much more efficiently, and get those workloads next to AWS services very quickly to start to get value and benefit, and at the same time, continue my cloud journey. So you can see why this discussion's starting to come up a lot now, and we're finding it especially important with our government sector customers, our federal customers, state, education, and non-for-profit, because it's allowing those CIOs and those operational managers and the IT people to understand that I've now got an opportunity to move workloads into the cloud very quickly, and I don't have to disrupt the business. So diving a bit deeper into this, the software-defined data center are those components as I mentioned, and to build a software-defined data center on VMware Cloud is a minimum of 3 nodes. And what VMware have done to provide the best platform and the supported platform and a managed platform for you is to make sure that it's always got the latest versions. And it's compatible with moving older versions of vSphere into the VMware Cloud and AWS. So VMware will manage and support the platform, and they'll make sure it's always updated and patched on the latest versions so that you don't have to do that. And so that takes a large element of risk and also manpower and cost out of managing your environment, maintaining the hardware, etc. And so here again is another additional benefit of VMware Cloud and AWS that we're offering as part of the managed platform. And of course, being with VMware already, most of your customers will be already there, you're using VMware support network now. Whether you raise a ticket through vCenter or directly on the phone, however you're doing that now is the same motion and mechanism you would use for VMware Cloud and AWS. So that is also seamless as well. And again, another area that the customer doesn't have to worry about, or you would have to worry about in your transition to VMware Cloud and AWS. So another seamless transition there for you. And again, one of the key important areas here is it's not a shared service. So the platform, the 3-node minimum platform, or any nodes that you move to increasing capacity over time, is all dedicated to you. So it's not multi-tenanted or shared. It is a single tenant platform specifically for you under your site ID. Right. Okay, so even within AWS, when we do our TCO analysis and our customer discussions, and I'd ask you to think about this yourselves, if you had to increase capacity, so if you have to go in and your data center's running out of capacity, you need more capacity, or you need to do a dev and test, or you need to move something into production and you don't have the capacity, how long would it take you to get budget approved, acquire the hardware, software, set up those licenses through procurement, configure it, commission it, and then get it out into the environment that you need to use so that you can do that? We found that typically it's 2.5, 3 months. Is it 4 months for yourselves? 6 months? It's a long time. It can take a long time. Now, to set up 3 nodes in VMware Cloud on AWS for a software-defined data center environment it takes 90 minutes to set up the initial 3 nodes. We've done it ourselves. We've had our own employees log on, go through, configure it. It's up and running, ready to move workloads into within 90 minutes. Now, if you want to set up another node or increase that by one more node capacity, it takes another 10 minutes. You think about the speed to getting capacity if you really need it, where you can move workloads from your on-premise or open up extra capacity for dev and test, and you can do that in 90 minutes. I challenge anyone in this room to say that they can procure hardware, configure it, commission it, and get it into the environment in a quicker time. So I think, again, there's another key point there, and that's just acceleration, speed, the speed of being able to have an environment ready to go, and you can shut it down immediately after you've used it. So you're not beholden, you can procure it on demand, and so if 90 minutes to set up, you can use it for a week, a month, 2 months, and then shut it down. Again, I think one of the key things here that we're talking about around hybrid cloud with VMware Cloud and AWS is that engineering component. And it's not, it's not trivial. Every 3 months, VMware is releasing or updating their platform globally. And we're finding that, it's on the back of what customers are asking us at both AWS and VMware. And VMware publish their roadmap on their website so that you can see in advance what are the requests being asked for, so you can get an insight as to where the roadmap's going and what the product's going to look like in 6 or 12 months' time down the track. So those items that may not be there today are likely to be coming down the track very soon. And so you've got this tightly engineered, jointly engineered solution, allowing customers to move workloads very quickly. And it's because we're integrating NSX, Direct Connect, and then VMware's putting that technology to hybrid cloud extension. And if you think about that, if you've used VMotion, you know that you can do it through this, the vCenter console. You can do a one-click VMotion, move one VM, but we're now up to thousands of VMs being moved at any single time. And so that's just an incredible story for us to talk to our customers about. And I'm sure you could now have that discussion internally and with AWS and with VMware, how quickly can we move? And I'll show you some examples with some of our customers, and certainly, I could rabbit on about those all day because we've got lots of them, but just the speed of what they're doing in moving workloads to VMware Cloud and AWS. Again, as I said, it supports vSphere versions from 5 to 6.7, so if you've got older versions, you can still VMotion and also get upgrades along the way. It's bidirectional. And of course, if you need load balancing or extra capacity dynamic resource scheduling, that can all be programmed in as well through the vCenter console. Right now, we've got 2 instance types. The i3 bare metal comes with storage and compute attached, and they're the configuration or the specs on that one. The R5 metal is where we can separate compute from storage. And so that's where storage-heavy applications which can drive up compute, and therefore the number of nodes that may not be necessary, you can start to pull that storage and compute apart, and then look at things like Elastic Block Store for the storage component, or S3, or a combination, along with vSAN. And so there's some more different combinations there because we're listening to our customers and we also understand the constraints that you have in your environments. There's a couple of choices there. Another important component is just having certifications. And I mean, because this is a global service, we've really attempted to move quickly on getting as many as possible. We still have to work on some local ones, and that's throughout all countries. There will always be some local policy and regulatory requirements around security, classifications and regulations. But again, this is evolving. So as we move to roll out VMware Cloud across the globe, and we're pretty much right across the globe now, we're starting to dive deeper into those requirements in each of the regions and each of the countries and getting those certifications. So you can see here, we've got 16 or 17 regions already launched, and 2 years ago when we launched this, we launched in US West and East, So that was certainly North America covered. And we were launching one region per quarter. As of August last year, we started to launch 2 or 3 regions per quarter, and we're continuing to do so. So VMware's really picked up from the learnings of having those initial launches done in the US and the UK and in EMEA, and now that by the time we've hit APJ, we're launching 3 and 4 at a time. And so we're really getting those out and across the region. So going global literally is possible with VMware Cloud and AWS. And you can nominate the regions you want to move your workloads to. And of course, we've got it here in Australia in our Sydney region. And again, we've got many customers running several workloads or dozens of workloads on VMware Cloud already. So it's not like you're the first. We've been launched now in Australia for a year, and we've got some good stories and good track records to talk about. I think one of the things that people ask me the most is so what are the use cases? Where would I use VMware Cloud? And across the globe, the number one area or number one business case we're seeing is data center evacuation, or closing down a data center because you've got many and you want to reduce to a few. And this is a perfect opportunity if you've got a VMware environment to move those workloads out very quickly. And this is by far the number one use case, whether there's a data center renewal or a hardware refresh coming up. Here's a new conversation that we've never been able to have with our customers before to say, we can help you move all of your workloads to AWS. Another use case that's really important that's proving to be very popular is capacity. And I mentioned earlier, the time it takes, and even from our own investigations, the time it takes to get additional capacity. If you had a dev and test opportunity, or you wanted to do some application development or on demand, at certain times of the year, it could be end of month, it could be end of year, it could be trading, it could be anything. If you need capacity and you can spin up a software-defined data center on AWS in 90 minutes, this is why this is very popular. And so many of our customers are also going, I can do that, I can use it, I can shut it down, move on. The third one we're seeing that's really kind of popping up as a very significant use case is DR. And that's because, and I would ask you yourselves as well, do you have a solid DR strategy? Do you have a good DR environment that you can test regularly? Do you have, are you using DR on-premise on expensive equipment and using expensive licenses? Here's an opportunity to look at how you structure your DR. And many of our customers now, we've got blueprints for this that are available on the AWS website, where you can leverage S3 to capture images of your existing snapshots of your on-premise configurations. And if you can spin up a software-defined data center or 3-node environment in 90 minutes, and you've got a slightly higher RPO or RTO, that could be a tier 2 storage solution for you at a very cheap option. So you start to consider about how you can address DR through VMware Cloud and AWS. And then the fourth one is next generation applications. So if you've got a legacy application that's on-premise, and you're able to split the database and say put it on VMware Cloud and AWS, and then integrate it through our 25 gigabit network interface straight into RDS for a relational database service that we offer, or to use data streaming or analytics or any other 165 services, you could start to do that. So think a bit more of how you could innovate. And if you're building new services or new applications, use VMware Cloud and AWS to start building those, testing them, and then moving them back into production. So lots of use cases here. These are the 4 most typical use cases that we see. And again, you might have other use cases. We'd love to hear them. I mean, this is not bound to these at all. And I think we're only touching the tip of the iceberg here in what we're doing around VMware Cloud. So just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, many of these are from our earlier customers, given that they've had time to use the product and try the solution out, and they've validated it, and then it takes time to get a reference out. But we're building up an ANZ database as well around reference customers. But we're doubling our customer base every 3 months or every quarter. So the interest around VMware Cloud is it's there, it's in the market, customers are using it now, they're hearing about the benefits, and they're starting to inquire more and more. If I talk to you about an educational institute in the US, this is a really interesting business scenario. So early on, when we released the US regions back 2 years ago almost, about a year and a half ago, this education a customer wanted to do a proof of concept. So they took 200 VMs, they did a snapshot, moved them across into VMware Cloud and AWS. Some of those failed, so they moved them back, reconfigured them, re-networked them. Within 96 hours, they had moved 200 VMs from on-premise into VMware Cloud. And they were pretty impressed with that. Just the speed and the agility and the no disruption. There was no disruption to the business. They then took the rest of their 3,000 VMs, so the remaining 2,800, and they moved them out of their data center into VMware Cloud in 45 days. They literally closed the data center down in 45 days by migrating all of their workloads to VMware Cloud and AWS. That's pretty phenomenal, and I think, you know, they have now been visited by multiple universities from around the globe, and they're very proud to talk about it. But they did it with two other, well, was one senior architect, and he had two aides that helped him do that, and they did that migration in 45 days. That's a pretty phenomenal story. Another one I want to talk to you about is PHH Mortgage. This company here had 350 VMs, and it was in a DR environment. They wanted to move it off on-premise and into VMware Cloud and AWS, and they were able to do that in just a few days. But the interesting thing here was while they were testing their applications in DR, they found that they were getting better efficiency and their applications were performing better. And that's because the specs of the i3 hardware, the bare metal that we provide as the underlying infrastructure, was better spec than what they had on-premise. And the fact that VMware had the latest versions of vSphere, NSX, and vSAN, and was patched and secured, it actually gave them more feature and functionality than they were getting with their DR on-premise. They've since swapped the DR that was on VMware Cloud and AWS for production, and they've moved their DR back to on-premise. So here's also another added benefit, is that if you take VMware Cloud and AWS, you may actually be getting a better upscale environment and just addressing those challenges that you've got with aging infrastructure. But like I said, I could rabbit on for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes about use cases, and I'd love to, and I'm sure we could talk afterwards, but I'd like to introduce you to Nav Pillai, who's the Director of Digital Transformation for Cenitex, and I'd rather have him talk about his journey with VMware Cloud so that he can tell you what he's done.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Nav.
Thank you.
So, Nav, I guess, in your role, if you could just tell us a little bit about your role and what Cenitex does.
Fantastic. Thank you. Cenitex, so we are Victorian government-owned IT shared service provider. So what we do is we look after most of the Victorian government departments. So I'll go into details of some of the critical departments we support: courts, justice, premier and cabinet, treasury and finance, health and human services, to name a few. So our customer base is around 36,500, spread across state of Victoria. We manage and support around 450 remote and regional sites and CBD sites. So that's kind of a volume from our customer base. So what services we provide to our customers is, first of all, we actually connect them. So all the network connectivity from all the regional areas, CBD and metropolitan sites, to the data center and to the cloud. We provide security services. We manage identity for entire Victorian government. So we look after that. We also host business critical applications in the data center. We provide managed applications, so wide range of IT shared services. That's what Cenitex does. Yeah, so that's a start.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty big bucket full of services there. Yeah. So I guess with all of those, end users, government departments, all those disparate, business units you have to deal with, what are some of the key business drivers that drove you to start thinking about hybrid cloud for, Cenitex?
Cenitex, okay. So just to give you a bit of a background, Cenitex was started in 2008 by the Labour government then with a view that shared service, create value, bring contracts together, have in a singular view to make sure that the government gets best benefit out of it. We went through, as any shared services provider, we went through some few challenges. Essentially, what we were doing is we were actually going to our customer base and said, oh, yeah, we are going to take your budget, we are going to take your people, and we are going to take your assets. And then we will consolidate and provide a service. So as you can imagine, that went really well with all our customer CIOs. Some of the, I've been in Cenitex for 10 years, so I've been through this journey. Some of them are very hard. So the investments started stopping. As soon as they realized that they are actually going to hand over system to us, naturally their attention started going somewhere else and investments started dropping. So I still remember back 10 years ago, we took over one of the department's storage arrays, and the capacity was around 98%. I'm not kidding, it was 98%. It was on Friday. Monday morning, we got a request from the customer saying that I want extra capacity in 2 days. So that's yeah, happy birthday. So anyway, so that kind of challenges we had, but we went through that. We consolidated a lot of things and we virtualized and all the right thing we did. So around 3 years ago, what happened was there was a change in our mandate. So the government came out and said, your customers are no longer mandated to use you. That's a big shift. Our business model is the government does not fund us. So we have to operate as a commercial entity, but with the government legislation and legal requirements. And then the mandate was taken away. So that creates a huge challenge in terms of our ability to maintain the current product set. How do we actually have a data center with all these assets that we can't justify that is there a service going to be available for 5 years? Can we actually do a refresh in 5 years? Is our customers going to use them? So that is the biggest first business driver for us, the change in business model. The second big thing for us is also our customers are moving into their cloud journey. They are actually expecting more. And the entire IT service provider become our competitor. So we need to adopt and change. So if I summarize in 3 business challenges, so the change of the business model, capital investment become major issue for us, and the demand. With the cloud, the customers have ability to get things done faster. So that's
okay. Then there's a lot of challenges there. I think you mentioned a story to me when we first caught up about going to the board. I mean, the business drivers around change obviously are very important, but you have to document why.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the things that we've developed between VMware and AWS is some business cases or getting consultants in to help us understand why customers need to move. Tell me about your board meeting that you had when you were presented this.
Yeah, this is interesting because as an organization, we've been doing relatively well. So we are a government agency. That means we are not supposed to make profit. So we don't call them profit, we call them surplus. But we also, we can't afford to make loss because we start zero from July 1, and as most of the public sector people understand, it's a funded model, but we've been doing really well. So over 3 years period, we actually keep making surplus. What do we do with the surplus is whether we actually give the money back to our customers or we actually reinvest. That's our model. So our board has been relatively happy with the way we are going. So I went to my CEO and said, Michael, we need to change. We need to fundamentally shift our business model. We need to change our operating model. We need to move away from CapEx to OpEx. And if we don't do all of this in 18 months, 2 years' time, we will cease to exist. He took he was not convinced and he was not happy, but I took my finance team also and tried to explain to him. Then he got the picture. So he said, you explained so well to me, why don't you actually explain the same thing to the board? So I said, fantastic, Michael, great opportunity to go and talk to the board. So we prepared well. So I was waiting outside the board meeting, and Michael comes out and said, now let's go, but just quick one. Unfortunately, I have not had a time to brief any of the board members what you're going to present. So that time it was a it was a career-ending move for me whether I actually go in or just walk out. So I decided to go in. So here I am standing in front of the board members saying that, hey, we have been doing well, but if you don't change in 24 months, we will cease to exist and we will become financially unviable. Our customers will desert us. So that was not a well-thought strategy from my part. But to give credit to my board, they asked me to come back a month later and to present. By the time we had more opportunity to actually present the case where the shrinking demand, cloud access, customers are actually modernizing the application. Our role need to change, our business model needs to change. So they were really good. The next one, or the first one, but
the second one.
I got them through, so that was good.
Excellent. And I guess you've, as a director of digital business, have bet the farm for on this whole hybrid adoption and your whole strategy, so that your customers don't have to. Tell me, what have you learnt from that, and where does VMware Cloud play into that?
I've asked my communication manager to pick up a farm, kind of a not good-looking farm. So that's where our status was in terms of where we are. We had a lot of technical debt, like most of you will have. We all have aged assets, and our average age of the asset was 7+ years. A lot of capital investment need to be done. Our people side capability also was a challenge. We need to upskill them, and we need to change the organization. So there's a few things that we need to do. So that's where building the farm comes into a picture, where we said we need to change, we need to transform. There is no incremental change. It has to be big bang change, not implementing the change, but thought process. You need to go big so that our customers, exactly what you said, our customers don't need to bet the farm, so we are betting the farm. So the first approach for us is about what do we need? What are the services that we provide that is very critical to the government? The main thing is, just to relate back to you, it could sound funny, but the services that we provide, if it goes offline, justice can't be served, because we provide services to Department of Justice, Corrections Victoria. Some of the examples, it's a live example, we are actually doing it. So court services, we provide support services to court, and that means extended to prison. So if a service goes down, the prison will have to go into a lockdown mode. So the number of hours the prison is actually in lockdown mode, all the inmates will get relief from their sentences. So these are the things people, even from my own team and extended team, they don't relate, because we look at IT. But the impact what we make to the community is huge. So that's where we thought, we have a lot of legacy application in the data center. Our customers are really going with the cloud, with adoption, but can we actually take them all the way there? Absolutely not, because there is no point. I'm a big believer of going to cloud, but there is no point of going to cloud, lift and shift. I think that's the initial kind of a lot of customers did. Not. I'm just talking about the global worldwide, and they all got a shock when they got the bill, and everyone said, "Oh, the magazine I read was going to cloud is cheaper." So we thought about that and say, how do we actually make a better choice? Hybrid cloud is an option. So we spoke to VMware and we spoke to AWS, and VMware on AWS, VMC on AWS is the answer for us. Next question, I can talk to you about the use cases and what we have done. So, but we have realized that we will still have legacy applications on-prem. That's not going to go away. So whenever I talk to my customers, they will say, I'm not interested in your data center. I said, fantastic. Please give me a date that you will actually take all your application out from the data center so I can stop investing. Can you give me a date? No, I can't. So, so hybrid is the answer for us.
Yeah, okay, great. And I think, you make a good point there. You're so ancillary to the risk factor of the business outcome. So IT, is becoming more of the enabler to de-risk, and that's what you're doing for your customers, because their services and their constituents need to have that resiliency and reliance. Okay, so I guess, what have you learnt, Nav? I mean, you've done this a few months ago now. Yeah. You're moving into the migrations. You're looking forward. What do you see as the future around your workloads in VMware Cloud?
Definitely. So what we did is we said, okay, we need to understand what is use case. So one of the biggest use case for us is, you already stole my thunder in terms of your presentation, which sounds so true to us. We could not afford to give disaster recovery services to our customers. Previously, it needed a lot of capital investment. Our customers could not afford it. We could not afford it. So VMC on AWS is a perfect opportunity for us as a business to provide value to the Victorian public service by going from DR. The other one is capacity. So I don't know where you got that 86 days number. I will gladly take that 86 on on-prem. My experience is if it is not 286 or 186 days. So the speed and agility, so that's the key factor for us. So the virtual desktop VDI environment, or that we are actually using with VMware Horizon, stayed in cloud, VMC on AWS, again, great business case. I don't know how many of you from public federal services still use Lotus Notes. We still have Lotus Notes, no, but we have migrated to Office 365, but we still have the legacy, huge, big archive servers with huge capacity. So it's an on-prem. That's where the next use case is going to be, is like, fantastic. Let's actually use VMC on AWS, make sure that it can actually deliver a lot of value for us. So these are the things. So the learning perspective for us is think big, but please make sure that you understand you need to actually bring the entire organization with you. Your legal, your procurement team. If you are actually start thinking about this, engage them early. So that's the lessons we learned. And my procurement and legal team has been really, really good. They've been fast, not fast enough for my expectation, but they're relatively fast because of the message from transformation is we are betting the farm, so we all need to pull our weight in. So that's a journey for us and a learning for me as well. The last one I'll touch about is people. So we have done a lot of campaigns. We actually make sure that we make our people understand. So we ran 50 odd plus lunch and learn sessions, or make sure that people understand our journey.
That's important. Thanks, Nav. That's great insights, and I'm glad the journey is going well, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank Nav. So, you've heard from Nav, you've seen a few customer use examples there. I think what we want to do now is just close out with, it's around the speed, it's the fast migrations. This is what people are really noticing, and this is the great talking point that we can bring to you and to all of our customers out there thinking about VMware Cloud and AWS. The other one is consistent operations, and as Nav said, just making sure there was not too much skills impact or people impact. That's really important. And then, of course, the integration with AWS services, I think, is another opportunity here that's kind of left behind sometimes in the conversation, but very important. And the last slide, or one of the last slides I want to show you is, this is a really interesting pictorial. I think it really brings together what we really talk about VMware Cloud and AWS. If you're going on an AWS journey, and many of you are, and we'll certainly support you as we do, and work with you to make that as quick a transition as possible, there is a cost bubble associated. Running two environments, getting skills, getting trained, having consultants, having professional services. I think one of the areas that we can start to interject, where VMware Cloud can help, is to actually reduce that cost bubble. So if you can get out of your data center quickly, or if you can reduce the footprint or not have that hardware refresh or increase that capacity while you're on that journey, that's a really important discussion to have. The other one is that once those workloads are on or in VMware Cloud and AWS, as that transformation journey happens, and during that period of a year or 2 years to refactor and re-architect those large workloads into AWS, you may already get earlier benefit by integrating the services, the AWS services, into those workloads you're moving into VMware Cloud. Or you might be able to start to then get de-risk factors if you lose a stakeholder, if there's an election, if you lose budget. So once those workloads are in VMware Cloud and AWS, you can actually start to really drive some benefit and some success out of those earlier. The other thing, I guess, is really about accelerating your innovation. You're starting to get workloads into the cloud. You can respond faster to changes. If your departments merge, or if there's an election, like I said, or you lose budget, you can move more quickly. And then, of course, you can optimize your costs. So I think, they're the three things that we want to kind of leave with you today. So if you're very much interested, have a look at where VMware Cloud might fit into your business outcomes and your business operation needs. Talk to AWS or VMware, and in fact, the VMware stand down there are being manned right now with people who want to talk to you about VMware Cloud and AWS. More than happy to give you more information. And of course, let's work with you to see if we can do a cost optimization or a TCO analysis in your current operations and work out how we can benefit moving your workloads to VMware Cloud and AWS. Thank you. I think I've run right to time. And I wanted to thank Nav again from Cenitex for joining me here on stage. And thanks for joining. And again, if you could do the survey, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.